Well, alright, and what do we have here? Yes, indeed, folks. I'm finally back to the J2. I'm doing a test fit right now. I wanted to see how everything's going. The hull is definitely loose in a few places, and I'm thinking that's one of two reasons. First of all, one that I've ruled out is the interior back room and the shuttle pod doorway interfering. There's a lot of depth in between them, and we'll take a look at that later. Item 1 is when this snapped and I took the door out, the whole thing was thrown out of round. That's the primary cause, a little bit. So there was a tight fit. I had to do some surgery on this overall. Let me pop the top off. It likes to stick nice even though it doesn't fit well. So over here there's a nice fit on the fiber optics and the soffits. These are fitting flush, so there's no problem there. And yes, indeed, I do now remember the second point, and that was that these guys don't stick quite flat. That one's not doing too bad, but the one that's under here broke quite a while ago. And the only way to hold that down is to actually glue it. And one thing I am considering is, do I glue this entire thing to the bottom of the hull just to minimize overall issues in the future? It can always be pulled apart. I don't think there's really going to be much work that would need to be done that you'd have to get underneath the hull or underneath the living space, but it's tough to say. There could always be something under there that blows out that needs to be fixed. You never know. All this needs to be tightened up and finalized, and here's a piece of the surgery that I did. This floor used to kick all the way out to the back, and once I put that false wall in there, it no longer needed to, of course. So I just chopped that down to help on the fit. I sanded down the corners here, and I think this one here, well, yeah, that definitely needs to be resealed. And I definitely gouged through here. This is completely visible, so I got to do a little more work on that, but that's the story with that piece overall, and I don't mind that. Overall, everything is looking decent. Things are a little dusty, not to mention all the surgery I just did that created all of that mess down there. And one of the other things I had the hull on was to test fit the window here, and that's pretty close to where it needs to be. I don't know that it needs to be a perfect fit, but it does have to be close enough to fake it overall. So I know I cut this piece off, but I can't imagine where. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so here's the piece of the wall that I cut off, which used to come straight down there. Here's a little bit of the floor right here. I don't know where all the pieces of it went. They're probably on my real floor down there. And because it's late, I had to do it all with a handsaw, simply because it's far too loud to use a Dremel, even though that would have only taken moments, of course. So I think this wall is just about ready to be finalized. A little more work on this guy. I'm going to have to see what effect cutting the ceiling way has done to when you're looking through there overall and it's lit up. I did have a lit test earlier. Right now the upper living quarters are not connected to the lower hull by power yet, so I'm going to have to do that, but I can light one or the other. So I'm going to build it with the full legs extended, so that phase is coming up very soon. All of this area here has to stay fully open because it's the lights here bouncing off the upper interior that gives the smooth illumination to all of the back wall. I may even pull these out and put in some LED tape. I'm not sure about that yet. I need to put those computer consoles in there, and pretty much everything is at the point where a lot of it needs to start coming together in such a way that it doesn't interfere with other parts of it, and at this point the order of operations has a very interlocking setup going on for it. I can't do certain things without other things. I've got to test fit the entire thing all the way as I start putting circuit boards in here, and I was about to start cornering down all these angles here to help get a better fit on the outer hull, and I wound up going through this corner here. So my first thought was to patch it off with a piece of styrene, just going over the edge there, and then I'd fill it from the other side with red putty. And then I realized that getting a really nice flat patch that large on two different angles, especially a curved one, was definitely going to be kind of tough. So then I figured, well, I'll cut out a piece of wall and put a new insert in here, and realized that getting this angle to match exactly was definitely going to be tough and need a lot more patching than it otherwise would. Then I realized, screw that, let's just replace the entire wall. So I separated it from the back, and by simply sliding in a new piece of styrene, I'll have a brand new wall. It'll be cut to shape on the outside, and that'll be that. So, and there will be a very minor amount of patching to do though. So another paint job, and that is done. And in cutting loose the extra edge here, I actually cut just a little more of it a few minutes ago. I definitely wound up exposing this crack here a little more than it needs to be, so I'll be doing a little patching on that. Otherwise, looking through the main view panel, probably the most obvious thing from this angle at least is the red ball and this station right here. You can barely see this computer station at all though, unfortunately. So I've been concentrating on this right now. This piece is all glued in, and over here on this bench, a lot of people will go and simply put a red LED in the middle of this, and that's not what's going on at all. What's actually happening with this little emergency ball is a bunch of different points of light all over it as I've fiber opticed, and those are blinking on and off randomly. So there's 9 of them. They're fed into there. I've already dumped white glue in here, so that's all set. I just need to glue this shut and then get 2 red flashing LEDs to go on the sides there, and this piece is ready to insert. Over on the computer wall itself, the copper panel from Fedoratron is glued in place and all good. This has been sanded down to best fit the area right there. And the last thing I want to do is to put these 2 panels on the front of this. First up will be those tiny little squares, and then this big frame over that, and then that will get slid into place there and finally glued permanently. My concern is, how do I get fine photo etch like that applied here without smearing glue all over the place, and get this to lay utterly and totally flat without gluing whatever it is I press to it into place as well. So those are a couple tough questions, I think, and I don't have an answer for them yet. This is one shot, winner take all, no second chances, totally unique, and I'll have to think about it for a little bit, because waiting on this assembly is all of this fiber optics, which needs to be trimmed into place and glued into place so that I can move on with all the other stuff that needs to be done. So that is where this is at for the moment. There's just so much stuff here between tables that it's really tough to get any filming because the tables are full. The booth there is full, with got this all full, and every other surface I have is pretty much full.